Good morning, everyone. I'm Dina Jensen. I'm the director of the Center for Nonprofit Leadership here at California Lutheran University, and it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar virtual workshop with Becca Merrill and Hannah Miller from Netzel Grigsby and Associates. I'm also joined this morning by my newer colleague, Nate Swanson, who is our program assistant here at the Center for Nonprofit Leadership and will be with us through the academic year. So really happy to be working with Nate and welcoming him to our learning community. So just a couple of housekeeping details before we jump into today's session. I'll be welcoming a few more of our colleagues as they get settled. Feel free to continue to introduce yourself and share your organizational affiliation in the chat box. One last quick reminder that we are recording today's session. We're also going to be making the slides available with a hyperlink once you complete today's evaluation survey at the end of the workshop. And I'll be explaining a little bit about how to register or take a slot, schedule a spot for open office hours. And these are really useful, very valuable one-on-one time with Becca and Hannah, based on the homework that they're going to be giving each of us at the conclusion of today's workshop. So I've had the benefit of working with both Becca and Hannah for a long time in a myriad of different roles and opportunities. And what I love about both of them is that they are both player and coach. Both have been on boards of directors. They've been in senior staff positions, fundraising experts, as well as in the formal consulting role. And really get it, what it's like to be us and to be managing fundraising plans. And so I know we're in particularly wonderful and supportive hands this morning. So I'm going to encourage each of you to ask questions and to share your thoughts and support to each other, as much as tap into both Becca and Hannah as our subject matter experts this morning. They work with a number of clients along the Southern California region, small, medium, and large campaigns and organizations. And so when I say they get it, I truly mean it. And I'm really glad that they're with us this morning. So I think that maybe Nate lost his connection, so he's going to log out and log back in. So Becca and Hannah, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to go find your slides just so that we can get the show started. So welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, am I up?
Yes.
Good way to start, not knowing when you're, I'm having a little internet trouble this morning. So at any point, Hannah, you may need to jump in there and just take it over. So thank you again, everybody, for being here. And we're very interested in this being participatory. Put your questions in the chat. Nate's going to help us monitor the chat. Dina will help us during the session. And we really want to be sure that you leave this workshop prepared to do your 12-month development plan, which is the homework that Dina mentioned. We are delighted to be together with you in this format, and we do recognize it is a very challenging time. So congratulations, all of you, for carving out a little bit of time and investing in your own development skills and in being sure that you have a solid plan to move forward with for your fundraising. Our goals for today, let's see, I'm not sure, is Nate back? Oh, Nate's back with us. Okay. Can you go ahead and start up our, there it is. All right. And as Dina mentioned, you will have this presentation available after you do the evaluation of the session. So our goals for today are to really look at three things. Like, we recognize that fundraising is a huge topic, but we want to hone in on a plan for you, a 12-month kind of plan, and you can expand it to an 18-month plan or whatever is the best fit for you. we want to be sure we give you some tools and some new ideas about how you are framing your overall fundraising activities for your organization. We want to explore different types of fundraising and hone in on, are you providing opportunities for different kinds of donors, for that modest donor that can give you $25, for that major donor that could give you $10,000? Are you doing the different kinds of fundraising that will attract those different kinds of donors? And then we want you to leave with some good thoughts about your annual plan. And we want you to bring that plan back to us during the office hours for a little of the individual time. The other thing I would add is we also want to discourage some tactics in fundraising that are ineffective use of your time and of your resources. And there are some things that people try and they invest a lot of time and resources, and they really often aren't as successful as you might hope. So we had asked you to gather some information, and Nate is going to help us now with a poll so that we can look at kind of who is the group that in the learning community today, who is our group? And we would ask that one person from each organization answer this first poll question. So is your organization's budget size up to 250,000? Is it $1 million? Is it over 4 million? Where do you fit? And it looks like we have in about 12 responses already. So let's take a look at that. We'll give you another minute to be sure everybody can get in and vote on that poll. Some of the observations I would make are that as you're thinking about your budget size, also be cognizant of your resources. So if you need to raise, looks like $500,000, we have a few people. Okay, it looks like that's closed now, and we have 84% have participated in this, and it looks like about 8 of the organizations are 250,000 or under. And it looks like we have adding together 11 that are $1 million up to 4 or over 4 million. And we have a couple that are in that $500,000 to $2 million range. And the thing that I would again have you be thinking about is not only your budget size, but what are the resources that you have? If you are a smaller organization, events are a good idea, but the scale of them has to really fit not only what you're trying to raise, but the resources that you have to put behind it. And by resources, I'm meaning, do you have the funds to support, for example, a golf tournament or a larger fundraising activity, a gala for perhaps? Or do you have the resources in terms of volunteers, and how about staff that will be needed to support that? So excellent. This really helps us get a good picture, and we are approximately half and half, under 500,000 and over 500,000, a few more in the over 500,000 range. Great. Let's go on to our next poll at this point. Okay, there we go. So what percentage of your funds come from philanthropic resources? And Lisa asked an interesting question, sent an email asking an interesting question. Are we talking about the overall organization? And perhaps you have contract income. So we're really looking at how much of your organization's budget needs to be raised through fundraising and through fundraising activities. Okay, it looks like everybody's answering this poll. Some people are still thinking about it or still trying to figure out where they weigh in. We're at about 76% have weighed in on this percentage. And it looks like this is a wide variety here. It looks like most organizations are coming in at about 25% of their income needs to come from philanthropic sources, with 7 organizations who are with us today coming in at they need to raise 50% or all the way up to 100% of their income from philanthropic sources. So very helpful to know how much of your budget we are looking at. And then the final question we have for you is not quite there, but it'll be there in just one second. Thank you, Nate. What percentage of your organization's revenue comes from grants? So meaning, you're not doing perhaps, maybe you're too reliant on grants. Maybe you aren't exploring grants as much as you could. So let's take a look at that picture and see if we can determine where is our group on that. I know we have one grant writer with us today. Dan is here and he's a grant writer, and some others of you, I imagine, have grant writing in your job descriptions. Okay, with 73% in, it looks like, it looks like 2010 organizations are about 25% of your budget is coming from fundraising activities, philanthropic, I'm sorry, I was on the previous slide, is coming from grants. So about a quarter of the budgets are coming from grant sources. And then we have 3 organizations where 75% of their budget up to 100% is coming from grant sources. So what we want you to be thinking about on this slide is, what is your reliance on grants? And many of you, if you are heavily reliant on grants, you might be evaluating what happens if, what's that future planning if that grant source no longer funds you or reduces their funding. And foundations are doing a lot of reevaluating where their funding should be going and what their priorities are. And we'll talk a little more about that later on. So this is really helpful to us. Thank you for participating in this poll. And I'm going to turn it over to Hannah here. As soon as we can close out that poll. There we go.
Thank you all for participating in those polls. It's so amazing to see the diversity in the room and where everyone's coming from. So I'm excited to spend this time with you. So in this next piece, we'll be talking about successful fundraising. This triangle is a balanced triangle that shows 3 important aspects that makes fundraising successful. The first one at the top is our compelling piece, our compelling case. So that's, as the organization, what problems are you addressing? How are you partnering with like-minded organizations or community members? What do you bring to the table that is effective? And Nate just wanted to make sure that you see that note about not being able to see the slide. And what are you doing that sets yourself apart from other similar organizations? So those are questions that are usually at the start of the oh, perfect, great. Start implementation of the organization, and should be something that is addressed early on. The next is your motivated leadership. That means your volunteers and your staff. Are your volunteers engaged and focused? Is the staff behind the development work? Do you have support? Even if you're a small 1-person development team, do you have the support of your other staff that really value the work that you're doing? And are you doing those amazing things that everyone is proud of? Are you hearing that? Are you able to be, excuse me, Sorry, I will apologize. We all have a ticklish throat, so I apologize if I'll be doing that a couple of times. Are you able to be balancing all of those things that are required? And that last piece of the triangle, where we're going to spend the majority of the time today, is talking about the cultivated field of donors. Are you engaging new people? Are you supporting your longtime donors? Do they feel appreciated and inspired to give more and do more for your organization? We often see that this piece is the most important piece, but one that sometimes is overlooked. Sometimes we forget to thank those people who give every month. Sometimes we forget to bring them into the organization and keep them involved, and also to just let them see what their gift of their time or their money is actually doing. So we're going to step into another quick poll. Unlike our previous poll, I'd like to hear from everyone. So even if you are multiple representatives from an organization, I'd love to hear from you. We're ranking this, looking back at the triangle, we're ranking this with 3. If you feel like you have all 3, your triangle is perfectly symmetrical, you are a 3. If you feel like you have 2 of the 3, you'd be ranking yourself at a 2. If you feel like you have 1 that's really strong, you're ranking yourself at a 1. I'll give everyone time to participate. And again, I'd love to hear from every member of each organization.
So Hannah, I think I set this poll up with a slightly different twist on it.
Okay.
Ranking them in top, second strength, third strength. So it's just
Gotcha.
going to interpret just a slight twist.
Okay. You're letting me use my Masters of Public Policy brain.
I love it.
Thank
Yes.
you. Okay.
And we still seem to be having some trouble. Some people can't see the survey.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 20 participants. And it looks like, Dina, you can correct me if I'm interpreting this data incorrectly,
Certainly.
but it does look like the top strength seems to be compelling case followed by motivated leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that does seem like the cultivated donors is a piece that it seems would say that the would be a strength that needs to be built.
I'm hoping that everyone can see the polling results. It may be that you're not able to see the poll because you haven't updated your Zoom interface for a while, but that is the last poll that we have for today's session. I'm going to go ahead and close this now. But it looks like the third strongest for the majority is having that cultivated donor field, Hannah and Becca.
So I'm thankful that you all are here. I'm thankful that we can dig into that and help begin to strengthen that. It's part of the work that we'll be doing this morning and the homework that we'll be able to review during office hours. So thank you all for your participation. So we want to talk about, moving on to our next slide past the poll, we want to talk about balancing your annual fundraising. So let's think about where we are today. And let's just think about how we are using our resources. You know, development work really requires time and our attention. So we have to just make sure that we're all being pulled in separate directions, especially in this day and age. We need to make sure that we're balancing our attention. And there's also a really strong return on our limited investments of time. So how we always have to think about, we have donors from all different walks of life, from all backgrounds, and we have to look at how we're engaging those. Sometimes things that might resonate with a high-end donor might not be the same that resonates with your monthly modest gift donor. We have to make sure that we are engaging properly throughout the year and being mindful of the different levels that and attention that each type of donor might require. So with that, it's a great start to start your development plan. These are things that will help you have a helicopter look of what your year looks like, how you can spend your time and resources, when you can bring people to the table to help you. And it gives you a really proper look at how things are going to look throughout the calendar year. It helps you so that the truth with the development calendar is that you also have to continually engagement. Nate, I'm going to stay back on that slide a little bit longer. Thank you. We want to make sure that we're always keeping it updated, that it's not something that goes on the back burner. We don't want it to be the first thing to go. We have to, it allows us to really spend our time, our resources well. And it also helps us, say no when it's appropriate. If we always, some of us might have, I won't make broad strokes, but some of us might have a volunteer or a staff member who will come into our office and say, how about this? We can do X, Y, or Z. And although the plan might come from the greatest heart, it might be something that might require a lot of your time and energy. It's easy to pull back to your development plan and say, that's not on the calendar. Let's talk about that and unpack that and see where that might fit in the future. But it allows us really to spend our time well. I do think it's interesting that there was a survey of 300 nonprofit organizations run by Windmill Hill Consulting, Bloomberg, and Donor Search. And they found a really strong correlation between those that had a formal and strong funding plan and those that reached their fundraising fundraising goal, excuse me. So you really have a roadmap for success. It can be it can be work, and it can be some getting used to the process of having a formal calendar, but it's one that does seem to have a payoff. So I would encourage you to really lean into this work as we go through it this morning.
Hannah, I just want to add on this engagement piece, the most successful board chairs, executive directors, development directors that we work with, calendar engagement. So they say every Wednesday, I'm going to have lunch with one of my donors, or I'm going to commit Wednesday mornings to coffee or phone calls or Zooms or emails. They put it on the calendar. And if you don't calendar it, it just keeps getting put on the back burner. So that is something we would suggest you all consider. When can you carve out the space and commit it to your engagement cultivation activities?
Thank you for that important note, Becca. I really appreciate that. On our next slide, we're going to look at a development calendar. We're going to break into breakout groups. Thank you, Dina and Nate, for organizing that. And we're going to discuss each types of fundraising. We're going to start each individually as an organization. We're going to go ahead and start filling this out. The document should be in the chat. If you scroll to the top of the chat, it was also emailed to you prior to our time. So I'm going to allow Nate to set our breakout rooms. Becca and I will also be part of the discussion. So we will pop in and chat with you as you go through this work.
I'm going to open them up right now.
Thank you, Gina. I would encourage you to go ahead, without thinking of things to do, start thinking of things you already are doing. So go ahead and fill that out with what you're doing now, and we'll do the next part of the work further.
Okay, so I think Nate ended up getting sent off to a group. Okay, he'll come back. Okay, now both of you should be able to just join a room. So Hannah, do you want to take room 1, and Becca, do you want to take room 2?
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine by me. Do you want to give time, Becca, for them to just start talking amongst themselves, or do you want to head in there now?
I think let's head in there and just sort of frame that. As you said, what are you doing now is a really good place to start. So I think that would be a good place to start with this, and then let them know that we're going to be trying to expand that over the rest of the workshop and in their homework.
Okay, perfect. So I'm taking number 1.
Yes. And then Becca will go into. And Nate, sorry about that. I didn't make you a co-host when you came back.
That's
How do I-
okay.
How do
I
I
just
get
mean
into the Zoom?
So
You
you
go. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, please. If you hit breakout rooms at the bottom, Becca, you should be able to join room number 2.
And I'm joining room 2. Okay, join.
And Hannah, you're
You
okay,
got it.
all set?
I'm on it.
Okay. And I'll give you a 2-minute.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you guys recording breakout rooms or do you record these?
Just the main room. I'm gonna pause when you.
Great. And our recording is back. We hope that time was good. Hannah, did you want to do a little conversation about the breakout groups before we take a break here?
Yes, it was really wonderful to be in our breakout groups. We were able to hear a little bit about organizations and just start the work of filling in existing activities. But I'd love to hear if there's in either breakout room, as you were going through the calendar, were you starting to see trends of maybe where you were spending a lot of your time? Do you feel like one of those columns has a lot of pieces in them?
Well, I will say that for me with the Friends of the Thousand Oaks Library, we have something that we call awareness, which is just trying to get our name out there through our local newspaper, city proclamations, and things like that to create awareness in the community, hoping to build membership. So that's something I'm not sure where to put on this particular calendar, but it's an important part of what development does, is create awareness in the community.
Well, you can certainly add a column there. Or if you're trying to build membership, if the purpose of your outreach is to build membership, I would put those activities under membership. But feel free to modify this form. We provided it to you in Word format, so it would be easy for you to manipulate. And something that came up just briefly in group 2 was, how do you bring in new people? And the best way to bring in new people is through your existing group. So being invited by someone who's already active to attend a tea, to come and learn something about the library, to have a discussion about a book, friends who are already connected, inviting in other people is one of the best ways for cultivation, but that is a whole other workshop that we could spend a lot of time on that one.
Yeah, we're in all volunteer organizations, so I think we tend to lump things together. So if we're doing a letter to the editor in the paper, we're hoping it'll bring us members, but also frequently our letters bring in donations as well.
Great.
So, we're lumping things.
Of course. And figuring out the resources that fits your organizations, and that's really important. So, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to spread out into new areas, but being realistic about what can be done and done well is very critical. I would say over the last maybe 10 years, we have seen a decline in responsiveness through newspapers or news outlets. We have seen that go down, that people don't seem to be paying as much attention to general media as they do to specific media. So you might evaluate that, Susan, or others might think about that. Would you be more successful sending out an email to a small group of your friends, inviting them, hi, I'm Susan, I'm so involved at the Friends of the Library, I'd love for you to join? Would an email from you personally be as effective or more effective? We've just seen quite a decline overall in development to general publicity, response to general publicity.
Do you mean, Becca, do you mean newsletters? So emails over like sending a newsletter. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, more anything that goes out, sort of dear friends,
Yeah.
or some a press release in a newspaper or something in News Hawk. We aren't seeing the kind of responsiveness
Okay.
the things that we used to see.
Okay.
So that's important. Paul, you have a question there?
I do. Thank you so much. I actually have two questions. One may be quick, one maybe require more of a response. One, in the description, I do like your calendar and it's helpful. They're written in there that was like medium/modest donors in one category, modest donors in another. And so I wondered if you wanted to take a moment to give us your definitions. And then second, I wanted to find out, you have social media as a category related to donor engagement. And I wondered if you could elaborate on that. When I read that, I'm like, ooh, like we're a community service organ. We provide services in the community countywide, kind of on the large side of things.
Mhm.
And I can't think of a social media thing that's not like just either advertising something that maybe was a development event that people would be comfortable getting recognized through. But other than maybe some kind of direct communications, which would be more, like email or another form of digital communication. So yeah, I'd like to hear more about an example of social media in donor engagement.
Hannah, did you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. So we typically see social media as definitely more of like a modest donor opportunity. And we typically see it as more like not organization centered, but say your board, who is very involved, makes an appeal on behalf of your organization. Their friend gives to the organization because of the board member. I'll give another example. Giving Tuesday is a great example. So we know after Cyber Monday, Giving Tuesday usually comes around. It's a great opportunity for nonprofit organizations to boost online donations, but we often see it as an individual soliciting on behalf of the organization, as opposed to the organization. They might make a post, say it's Giving Tuesday, we'd love to have your support. But what really moves the dial is the engaged donor board member making the ask. Does that make sense? That feels like a very convoluted wordy way to say it. But we typically, when I look at modest donors, we see usually like 25, 50, like one-off. And we'd love to engage them, continue to build that, bring them into the fold, but it might be their first gift to your organization. Becca, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, and I would just say you need to define who are the donors that you are trying to reach with each of these kinds of fundraising. So is a small or a modest donor to your organization, is that $25 a year? Is that $1,000? Is that $5,000? So you need to define kind of where you would see these different donors and what is the target audience for each of these. The area in our group discussion, someone asked the question, can donors be inundated by, gee, I got a direct mail, then I got something through email, then I got a, request for membership. The answer is yes, donors can get very inundated. So you don't want to send everything to everybody. You need to start to look at that list and really decide, who's our target audience for this. On the other end of the scale, paying more attention to your larger donors. And again, that might be to your organization, that might be a $5,000 donor, or it might be a $500,000 donor, but paying attention to those individual donors, making sure you take them out to lunch, that you invite them to go with you on a hike, whatever is a good fit for your mission, being sure that you spend time with those individual donors is critical. And if you don't calendar it, it's just unlikely to happen.
So Becca and Hannah, I've got a couple comments in the chat box. Linda's sharing that they're super new nonprofit, so idea sharing on types of fundraisers and engagement opportunities would be helpful. Largely built around, they have a turkey trot in November, and that's about it for fundraising events. And then she said, thank you.
Well, I'll take that one, and Hannah, you can do the next one. So the next section, after we have a little break, we're going to talk about different kinds of fundraising. And what I would suggest you do is consider kind of what would be 3 different ways that you would appeal to donors, and kind of what would be your high-end donor appeal, and how would you go about that? How would you begin to bring in middle range donors? And then what is the entry point for more modest donors? That would be my suggestion there. And if you do a turkey trot, maybe you also look at doing a more general appeal, and maybe you wind up doing something that's a little more high end for your high end donors. Dina, did you have another one we needed to respond to in the chat, or Nate?
Yes, so there's also a question, it's back to the social media. Once we engage donors and members on social media, was to recognize their accomplishments or activities that were in line with the organization, and to engage with their social media profiles. Heidi asked the questions about thanking a company who'd recently donated a $10,000 gift.
Congratulations. That's awesome. My first question would be, how did that $10,000 come? Was it out of a direct ask? Was it?
No, it was a friend of my sister's who has a very successful company in Santa Barbara. And so he came to our son's celebration of life, and he said, now that we're a nonprofit, be sure to let me know when you have the nonprofit status, because I donate, for tax write-offs.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't believe it. So I texted him and just said, okay, we're now a nonprofit. And then that same day, his company donated $10,000.
Wow.
I know. It's
Congratulations. That's
thank you.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of ways, and we think there are a lot of ways that you can really thank the company and thank him. But it's also, some companies, some individuals like to be a little bit more quiet about their gifts. So just understanding where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Some organizations will take it as an opportunity to name something after a donor, depending on what your major gift.
Mm-hmm. That's an idea. Like. Yeah.
But I think that's but the truth is also making sure that they're engaged, because from what it sounds like, this doesn't seem like a donor that will just be a one-off.
Right.
So making sure that you keep them informed about how you're maximizing their gift.
Okay.
And really properly thanking them with a phone call. A handwritten note is often overlooked, but goodness gracious.
Okay.
It really matters.
Okay. I like that. Okay. Thank you.
So Hannah, also riffing off of that, Michelle, and I think this is really supportive, which is, it's not a one size fits all for cultivation, stewardship, or recognition, but really having a plan for each of the donors that's commensurate with their relationship with the organization, not just the gift size, but their relationship. Michelle shared that they started a stewardship program that assigned board members a certain number of members or donors to engage with throughout the year, and that they set a level cutoff to kind of curate the list, and then board members need to engage with each of their assigned members at least quarterly in a way that's meaningful, I imagine.
Okay,
I love that.
Okay.
Sometimes for organizations that are starting to just build that, one very easy way to do that is remove how much a donor gave from a list, but at each board meeting you circulate the fundraising, and you say, okay, can you call these 5 people? Can you call these 5 people? It's a way to thank others and to continue to bring them in. But it's also seems to be a manageable task.
Okay.
That board buddy system that I think it was Michelle brought up is something we've seen work really well, where board members have a small number. It's usually, 3 or something like that, people that they connect with. And so it becomes their job to say, hey, can you come? Our organization, the kids are doing a little, music concert. Could you come and stop by and just hear what the kids are doing? And then could we go have coffee? I mean, it's really simple stuff that keeps them connected to your organization's mission.
One of the problems that we have in my organization is that we're siloed. So there's a membership person, and none of us know who the members are. And then there's the fundraising. I'm trying to get new donors, but I don't know if they're members or not. And so we're working on trying to coordinate from our different spreadsheets, and we don't have any sort of donor management system or membership management system. And then, of course, we're all technology challenged in terms of trying to use MailChimp or some of those other tools, and to get all of these spreadsheets working together. So, getting to know our donors and whether they're members or not, all of that information is not being coordinated or in one place where everyone can look at it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's a really important finding, Susan. And addressing that seems like job one, because it's not good for you to be fundraising with someone that's a member and you don't know that. And so what you might do when you're thinking about board recruitment is you might be thinking about, or a volunteer recruitment, is what do you need people to do? And you clearly need somebody who can help you put together a really simple donor management to be able to have the list of fundraising with members together. And so I would start to think about, when you're looking to recruit, either for one of your committees or for the board, what are the tasks or the action items that you need them to do? And sometimes board recruitment falls into this area of, we should have one banker and one attorney, or that kind of a checklist. And we don't recommend that. We recommend you really look at, what do you need them to do? And on Cal Nonprofits, excellent article that Jan, the CEO there, wrote about strategic recruitment and what you need to be looking for. Again, that's a whole nother workshop, but I would suggest you go there. And maybe Dina, if you could put the link to Cal Nonprofits.
Sure, I'll find the article you're referencing,
That'd be
Rebecca.
great. That'd be great. Yeah, they're really smart about that, and that might be helpful. And I'm guessing there's somebody out there that would love to help with the technology side of what the Friends of the Library are doing. Well, I'm just looking at our time here, and it's 10 o'clock. We were thinking it might be time for a break. Let you get up and stretch your legs, refill the coffee, and let's plan to come back in. Hannah, you'll have to help me with that. Was it a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break?
A 10-minute break.
Great. So we will look to see everybody back here by 10:10, and we will be delving into what are the different kinds of fundraising and what's a good fit for your organization. Well, it is 10:11. We are back from our break. So the next portion that we wanted to spend some time talking about are, what are the different kinds of fundraising? And welcome your questions during this so that you can consider, when you're putting together your annual plan, where do you want to focus your time and attention? So I'll take the first slide there, Nate. Thank you. So we've talked a bit about direct mail or soliciting through social media. And we would see these two kinds of fundraising as a vehicle to acquire new donors. That's where you can begin to reach out of your inner circle and make connections. And I think, as Hannah said earlier, the best way to do that is through the people that you already have connected. So board members reaching out, board members putting something on their Facebook page, even with direct mail, if it can come from someone that your donors know, that's really helpful. I received a direct mail piece that was signed by 6 people that I know. And because they all had put their signatures on it, it really gave me confidence that this organization was really needed the funds and would handle the funds well. So making sure that your direct mail or your social media has a personal contact is how it will be most effective for you. Someone brought up the point about cost versus income, and you can spend more money in this area than you bring in. And that's not uncommon with direct mail. And this is the opportunity where you bring in modest donors. So one example I would share, and then I'll open it up for all of you to share in the chat or a hand raise, is Giving Tuesday was mentioned earlier. And in 2021, Giving Tuesday gifts increased by 9%, which is a very healthy increase, to $2.7 billion raised worldwide on Giving Tuesday from 17.8 million donors. If you have not explored giving through Giving Tuesday, there's a wonderful toolkit. Just Google Giving Tuesday, and there's a wonderful toolkit that they've put together for nonprofits to be able to use that vehicle. You do have to have people's email addresses. So that's an important note to your donor base. Something I thought was fascinating in 2021 was that, you know, online sales on Black Friday, we're talking about right around Thanksgiving there, Black Friday and Cyber Monday went down, but giving to philanthropic organizations went up. So philanthropy beat out consumerism. That's pretty exciting. And make it fun, be creative, short videos that people can see your program. If you have the kind of program where it's confidential and you can't show an actual participant, it's nice to have somebody do a testimonial. So someone who's well known to donors, and it can be pretty short. Let me just ask let me open it up real quick here and see, I'm not seeing any hand raises, but are there questions or comments, or anybody want to mention what they are doing in terms of acquiring those modest donors? I'm looking quickly to see if I see any hands raised. I don't.
And I can.
Amy's got her hand. She went old school with like the human hand. I love it. I love it. Amy.
Go ahead, Amy.
I can just go over a little bit of some of the things we've tried last year, and we haven't done all of them this year in 2022. So Kids and Families Together has a focus on a certain population. We serve all of Interior County, foster, resource, kinship, and adopted children and their caregivers. So we provide counseling services. We have contracts with the county. So our fundraising is going to like fill those holes that the county funding doesn't cover in those contracts. So because we have these very 3 key areas, we have tried in years past to focus on the 3 months that are recognized nationally as Foster Awareness Month, which is the month of May. September is Kinship Awareness Month, and November is Adoption Awareness Month. And at another one of CLU's. There was, and Dina, I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but she said I was told by her those 3 months are terrible for fundraising. so
Oh,
we,
it was Katie. It was Katie.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
Katie.
yes. So
But
we,
it's working for you to
No.
be able to, okay.
it's-
So
it's
sometimes,
not- yeah.
sometimes you can parlay a national event or a local event
Mhm.
and tie your fundraising to that. You can give that a try, but it often isn't as successful.
Yeah,
So
we tried before COVID. We used
Yeah.
those 3 months were our community leader luncheon. So we would try to have a luncheon in May, which then took the focus off of this has to be a fundraiser. It was more of sometimes we would get some funds.
cultivation, yeah.
Right, it was more cultivation. So those seemed a little more successful. And then since COVID, we've tried direct mail appeals, literally, a printed letter being mailed out each one of those 3 months. That was in 2021. And then this past year, we decided to tackle May Foster Awareness Month more on a social media appeal. We had which I thought was an extremely compelling story that we segmented out into like 4 parts. So I could release a segment of this video each week. And we sent the links out on Facebook and through our MailChimp. And we had 3 donors to that campaign, and 2 of the donations came from me.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing the
so thoughts on any of that?
that's kind of a what not to do here. Paul
Yeah.
has his hand up. Paul?
Hi, I know I asked the question about social media before, and then I'm like, oh, we actually did a couple things that that I didn't have in mind. But I wanted to share 2 examples of things that kind of opportunities that fell into our lap and were a little bit more community facing and kind of an opportunity to cultivate, modest donors. And for us, we are an organization that kind of serves a lot of different needs. And so to have the opportunity to make fundraising events effective, but also drawing a larger circle to engage, constituents that may have very little philanthropic capacity, but are, but are part of the communities that we serve is also important to us. That said, our annual fundraising event used to be more of a gala, and part of our services is mental health, an array of mental health counseling programs for all ages. And so we actually do it in May, our annual fundraising event, our large event. This year we brought in, like many organizations, a speaker who is an expert, compelling speaker. And in addition to having like an in-person reception with, cocktails and hors d'oeuvres and that kind of thing, we also opted to make it available for virtual participation for free. And so that was the social media opportunity to really partner to get the word out. We partner with a lot of organizations, government, private schools, et cetera. So that was a good opportunity to use that network to promote this, this expert speaker on a topic that really is important for all of us to hear. We did have one other little one that kind of fell into our lap. A friend actually, who's a documentary filmmaker, part of our counseling services, works with caregivers, senior caregivers. And we have a friend who did a documentary film that was actually going around, and she offered to actually do a screening for a small private audience. So we were able to bring together partners, constituents in a venue, and it was limited, but it was really a great opportunity to raise awareness about the issue of caregiver mental health, and also engage folks that may become donors as well.
Yeah, great examples. I appreciate that. Let's go to the next slide here, because you Paul kind of took us into the next area here that we wanted to talk about different kinds of appeals. Nate, can we have the next slide, please? There it is. Let's talk about those of you that have some kind of membership. And this can be pretty simple, membership level at $25 a year is an entry, $100 a year. It's usually in that range. This is when you see something like you have a sense of belonging, I connect with this group, I'm a member. And that's when you hear things like, I'm a proud member of NPR. They do a good job with bringing people in, like-minded people that are connected. You want to, if you have a membership program, you want to define what that is, and you want to invite participation, and Paul mentioned that, sort of exclusive member events, such as time with a naturalist on a hike would be another example of that kind of opportunity. And then sustained annual giving, and how do you move them up the ladder? So I had an interesting conversation with the donor who had been a donor for over 5 years, an annual donor, over 5 years to this organization. And he said, I've never been asked to increase my gift. So how do you move people up? If I'm $100 donor to you, can we have a conversation about something that I really care about that you're doing, and move me up to $1,000 a year kind of a donor? What we know about memberships, organizations such as the YMCA, is people who are members are more likely to continue to donate, and they are more likely to continue to volunteer if they are members. So let me invite somebody who has a membership organization to share some of the special things that they do for their members. Anybody want to step up to that one?
I'd love to know, like, how you would, if you have your donate page, obviously everyone has a website and a donate page for general donations. If you want people to be members, do you have that as a separate donation page? Like how that would be set up to even give people the choice.
Anybody want to ring in on that, who has that already set up? I mean, generally speaking, I would say that is an option on your donor page. So you could be a general donor, or you could become a member. And I would be more likely to set it up that way, and maybe have it be 3 or 4 categories, naming some benefits that you can do for your donors. So Paul mentioned one, and that was have an expert in the field come in and give a lecture that you invite people to. And that can be virtually, or that can be in person. Make
and
sure
that would be, sorry, and that would be in addition to offering just monthly donors, like sustaining donors. So you'd have give a gift, give a recurring gift, become a member, and get benefits.
Well, you would have to link those two together. You know, if I'm a, let's say, a monthly donor that takes me into a membership level, then you would have to be sure that those benefits are available across the board. But you'd need to coordinate that. Usually membership happens through a membership drive a certain time of year. So that would be, you might think about that. Would membership fit there? And membership may not be a fit for your organization.
Becca, something else I've seen successful is actually other donors sponsoring members for other communities. So giving circles where they're engaging new generations of donors, actually inviting the legacy donors to help subsidize the membership fee to engage a particular constituency who may have barriers to full participation in the membership community.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. That is a great addition, and a really important way that you can make sure that you are reaching people in different who may be underserved, who you would like their participation, but perhaps they don't have the financial ability to be involved with you. So that's a great way to do that. Thank you, Dina. We'll take the next slide.
Oh, could I have a quick question? Are there any other ideas? I know we heard like a lecture or a naturalist. Any other benefits to members?
Anybody want to share what they're doing?
So I'm from
Go
Girls
ahead.
in Carpinteria, so we're a little different because we're a youth serving organization. And so our members are donors who give $1,000 or more. So it's like a leadership giving circle. And they're called our champions for girls. And so like they're invited to like exclusive events or to attend our event early with a champagne hour, or just to come in and have like a private tour of our facility. So just a little twist on what
Okay.
everybody else is doing.
Okay.
Our members with the Friends of the Library get early entry to our special events, our book sales.
Okay.
They can be first in line to buy books.
Yeah.
And then the library does a one city, one book program that we fund. And the author of the book that has been chosen for all in the community to read, we have special entry for that as well. So special early entry.
Okay.
And we
Oh,
get a
great.
lot of members standing, potential members standing there in line because they want the best seats for that event. So we get a lot of members at the book sale and the City One Book program.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie and Susan, both great examples. And it's very important that your recognition, your benefits fit your audience. So be thinking about who that is. And there's nothing wrong with calling a few of your donors and saying, I'm thinking about, establishing membership tiers. And I'm wondering about benefits for them. And here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? And donors are usually very happy to have you ask for their opinions and their thoughts. The one donor that you mentioned, Heidi, that sent you the $10,000 gift, I would certainly be having a conversation with that donor about what do they think and what would be benefits that they would like as a company. All right, I will take the next slide and we will keep talking about different kinds of fundraising. And I just want to say a little bit here and invite maybe Dan to talk about it from his perspective. There are family foundations. If you are funded by a family foundation, you need to get to know these people if that's possible. Sometimes family foundations give through a donor advised fund at the Santa Barbara Foundation or at the Ventura County Community Foundation or other places. So it's a little harder to get to know those donors. But if you have that opportunity, that's an important piece. If you are looking to corporations for their grant writing, for their grant opportunities, it's very helpful if you can have an advocate, an employee who's involved with you, someone in the company that loves what you do. And then government grants for you to be thinking about are often a wonderful source of funding. However, the application and reporting requirements are sometimes really onerous. So before you apply for grants from a government source, be sure that you have your organization has the ability to meet with what they require for reporting, and that's possible for you to do, because sometimes it can be quite extensive. The one thing I would say about grants overall is that it's really important to connect with what is the foundation's goals. What are their goals, not your goals? So for example, the McCune Foundation has a slogan of they fund doing with others, not doing for others. And if you have a program that reaches out to an excluded population and you are engaging them in what you are doing, the McCune Foundation would be a great opportunity for you. But if you are strictly providing services to a population and they are not involved with what you're doing, it's not going to fit McCune's guidelines. So be thinking about what is it the foundation wants, what are they looking for, what are their goals, and how can your organization help them achieve those goals. Let me ask Dan, would you like to add anything here?
Yeah, I think everything you said was right, making sure that you're reading the language of their application. The other thing I think a lot of mistakes that are made are people don't answer the questions that they're asked well. And sometimes they'll, ask a really specific question, like, tell me about how your organization um, um, solves social justice issues. And it's kind of a general question, but if you really think about it and focus on answering it, um, it'll keep you from going into the weeds. And a lot of people will just get really general, and then before you know it, they're answering a different question. And I think I've been a grant reader before, and I think as a reader, it becomes frustrating where you lose points because you just want to be told the answer in an interesting way. And so what I learned to do is just almost rephrase the question and even use a lot of bullet points. So it's almost like a technical writing, even though it's creative too. I'll say we resolve social justice issues with our community by one, state it, two, and then that becomes my format for, the narrative. So I would say just really focusing on that and not necessarily feeling like you need to meet the whole 3,000 or 4,000 character limit. That's frustrating too as a reader, where you think people are just filling in instead of just answering the question. And if it takes 3 small paragraphs, then so be it. Other than that, I think that was kind of the only thought I had.
That is great advice. Thank you. I have also been a grant reader, and you can really discern if the organization is responding to what that particular foundation is asking, as opposed to if they are just sort of cutting and pasting information that is too general about their organization. So great advice, Dan. Thank you. Very helpful. And from our poll early on, it's clear that a number, it seems like everybody has at least 25% going up from there on grants. So take the time with them, respond to what it is they're asking, and get to know the people at the foundations if that's possible. Go ahead, Nate. We will go to the next one. Another kind of fundraising is events. And I wanted to chat with you about that and their kind of how they fit into the whole fundraising picture overall. So events are opportunities to gather with like-minded people. It's a way to have fun in an area that you are interested in. If you are interested in art and you attend the Santa Barbara, the Museum of Art, this is a way for you to get together with people who also appreciate art and to feel like part of something. Events should make friends for you. They should bring in new people into your circle, as we talked about earlier, by your board and other volunteers inviting in people, but they should also make money. So the concept of a friend raiser as a fundraiser, be clear about what it is you are trying to accomplish. And generally, when I hear people say it's a friend raiser, they either mean it was a cultivation event that wasn't intended to make money, or it was a fundraising event that failed. So they say, oh, we made friends. But if you are looking for a fundraising event, be sure that it makes friends as well as brings in dollars. You may find that events attract different donors or different groups than those who give to you annually, or perhaps your inner circle. Events can be a great way to engage people. And there was that conversation earlier about how do we bring in more people into our universe? And events are one way to do that. They, a great way to bring people in that maybe you've had contact with someone or they've made one gift to you, asking them to volunteer to put on an event is a great way to bring them into your circle. So be thinking about what is the next step for this person and how can we bring them in closer. I would also just note that sometimes events attract people who are not that interested in your organization, but they're coming just to the event. And a golf tournament would be an example of that. Often golfers participate in golf tournaments because they're fun. And the fact that it's, a Boys and Girls Club, it's Girls Inc., it's a museum, it doesn't really matter to the golfers. And sometimes or frequently, golfers will not become part of your donors in other areas. So be cognizant, again, who's your audience and what are you trying to accomplish here? Events can also be labor intensive. So be thinking about that as you are filling out your development calendar. Do you have the volunteers and or staff to help make an event successful and to make it work well? If you're doing a special event that is meant to be a fundraiser, your goal needs to be that you want to spend under 1/3 of what you're going to raise. So if your goal is to raise $100,000 from an event, you should be spending under $30,000 to pull off that event. Anybody want to raise a hand or add anything in the chat about events? They can be very powerful and they really can stretch your circle. It's just important that you, again, target what you're interested in. And it looks like, hi.
Yeah,
got it.
I have a question. Yeah, actually, I had 2 questions about this because we have 2 events scheduled. And I wanted to find out about how do you sponsorships for events and also email, like, do you always want to make sure that they RSVP online so you can get their email address to build your contact list?
So I'm sorry, the first question was?
Sponsorships. Could you talk a little? Yeah, for events.
Okay, so for most events, sponsorships is where the money is. And people buying tickets or people buying tables is a more minor income source.
Okay.
So building out a sponsorship levels, and you want to request these in person with the business that you are asking to sponsor your event, and you want to ask for a specific amount. And you want to be clear on what the benefits of that event are. So for example, Casa Pacifica in Ventura County does a big wine tasting event. And what they do is they meet with the sponsors, they do a proposal for those sponsors, and they invite them to be a sponsor and say, we can have a special cabana for you at this level. And we will have your banner up with your logo on it.
Okay.
We will put your logo on the invitation.
That's
so you
good.
need to be clear about what the benefits of sponsorship are.
Okay, that's good.
And the other question was?
Oh, about email. So like if you have an event where people are coming to, do you recommend they RSVP via online so you get their email addresses, or do you have them write it when they pay for their ticket, come in?
Either way is fine.
Okay.
Who's your audience? But if you have them RSVP online, it probably makes it easier for you to keep track of who is coming.
Okay.
And I want to emphasize again, the work of an event is do a great job, give them a good time, make it meaningful for them. If it's going to be a lecture or if it's a gala, make it meaningful for the audience. And then follow up. Look at who attended, look at who didn't attend. What's the next step with them?
Okay.
Ask attendees, call them after the event or email them and say, I was so glad you attended. I wondered if we could chat about what you liked and didn't like about the event, or if you have suggestions for us. Be sure that you engage people after an event. It shouldn't be a one and done.
Okay. Great.
Becca, can I just also add, it's important to solicit approval from folks who are attending attending events to add to the newsletter. So don't just dump your guest lists into your email subscriptions. Even if you have an opt-out, the best practice is to get an explicit permission for those newsletters. Otherwise, I think folks get, especially those folks who might be really interested in the event itself and maybe not as motivated around the mission of the organization. So usually you can add that relatively quickly to an online registration or RSVP system.
Great suggestion. And again, doing events is a whole subject in and of itself. But if you are new to doing events, spend the money to attend a couple of events from larger organizations, and you will get some ideas about what would be a good fit for you. There are big galas and there are smaller galas, and we're going to talk about some smaller ones and as we work on your plan. But events should, if your goal is to connect people with your mission, then be sure that's what happens at your event. Golf tournament, if your goal is to make money, then that's what that event will accomplish for you. Okay, next slide. I'm just watching our time here. So some of you may sponsor participation events. This would be a bike ride or a run. And if you are considering this, there are experts that can help coordinate this for you. It will require many participants for these kinds of events to be successful. Most of the time, organizations hire an expert to run the actual event, but the organization is responsible to get the participants. So you can hire a firm that can set up a great run for you or a great bicycle trip for you. And then your job is to get people to participate, and it takes a lot of people to make them successful. Sponsorship of these kinds of things, these kind of participation events is critical. And again, that's where your money is. And these kinds of events can also be labor intensive. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead a little bit because I know we're running through on time, and I want to really spend a bit of time on this. So over 80% of philanthropy comes from individuals. So we have grants, we have corporate support, but over 80% comes from individuals. And some of those might be, in the story that we heard earlier, it might be an individual who gives through their company, but they're giving because of that personal touch. So we want to be sure that as you build out your development plan, include how are you going to reach out to individuals, and how will you build those relationships, and what will those touch points be? Donor advised funds giving, again, this is an individual sets up a donor advised fund, is up 27% to over $35 billion. So we are certainly seeing more activity in donor advised funds through community foundations. And you may or may not have access to who that donor is. If you know who that donor is, and if you have access to them, and if they're open to it, this is the kind of donor where you want to build a relationship with them. You want to cultivate them. You want to steward them after they have made their gift. Spend your time here. If you have a facility, this is where you give them a personal tour. A staff and board luncheon is a great way to connect with individuals, where maybe your board president takes a donor out to lunch, and it's not an ask. It's just simply a conversation about what your organization is doing and how delighted you are to have them as part of the family. If you do an annual campaign, and if you're doing event sponsorships, again, those should be personal asks and not kind of a form letter sent out in the mail. This is the most effective, most cost-effective way of raising money, is to build relationships with your organization, with individuals. So anybody have a thought or a question here? Let's see, it looks like Sharon's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that one of the things we've started to do is Amy does a monthly donor report for us. And so I review that as the board chair of the organization. I review that every month and I send out thank yous to the donors. So it's
Beautiful.
a way to reach out.
Beautiful. That's perfect. That's really good stewardship of donors. Anybody else want to share what they are doing or have a question about connecting with individuals? This is the personal touch. This is whether you have to do it in the Zoom room or whether you can do it over lunch. This is the personal touch.
Oh,
Looks like Amy has something.
yeah, I can't figure out where the hand raise button is. Sorry.
Okay.
Just to pick up on what Sharon was saying, she will write, like, as board president would write, like, personal thank you notes, often handwritten, and I'm responsible for doing like the standard letter from the agency for your tax write-off. But I do try very hard to personalize them, because we will have donors that, along with our counseling services, we have events that are focused on helping our families in different ways, providing them physical support. We have a back to school event coming up. So for instance, if someone donated to a specific event that we have, say they donated to our spring event, or we had a bike event a couple weeks ago, I wait till we have photos from that event and I will include those in the letter.
Beautiful.
And if they are a recurring donor, I usually try to kind of do a running tally. So they may be getting multiple letters from us this year, so they see their growing tally of what they've donated year to date with pictures of the most recent event that we've had.
Love it. I love it. And recognize people for their total
Right.
donation. This is also the area where you really want to focus on what it is they are interested in. If they're interested in children's literacy and you're a youth serving organization, let's talk to that donor about what you are doing with your homework programs or after school programs to help with children's literacy. Let's not talk to them about the sports programs. Let's really make this donor centric. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Amy. That was excellent.
And Becca, Paul has his hand raised also.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for everybody conversation. This is so good. I'll just add two things. One is that so we're fortunate enough to actually have an active development committee. That's a committee of our board of directors. So that's a great way that we can kind of engage with, kind of some of our highest donors are there. Some people who don't give as much, but they're definitely engaged and ambassadors for us. The other part of that, though, is I think we're like a lot of organizations where we really do need to further individual donations. It's a very small portion of our overall budget, maybe similar to Amy and others. Contracts and grants do make up a lot of the resources, but we work with donors for flexibility as well as foundations. That said, one thing we're really making an effort to do, and I don't know if this is a question that somebody would speak to, we're making an effort to really capture the relationships that are happening, because they're through our committee members, through our board members, through our leadership, myself and others on our team, there is a lot of donor engagement happening, but because we don't have a standalone, major gifts officer, it seems like we're doing a lot of things really well. And now it's a question of packaging up and then figuring how we can grow that package. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to speak to their experience with how to move the needle in that direction or other strategies that might be helpful.
Hannah, you want to jump in on that one?
Yes, I love that you are acknowledging that you're having so many touches, and are you tracking those individually? I just wanted clarity on that.
We when it comes to communications, yes. So we, thank you letters are always going out. Thank you cards are always going out. Those things are quite easy to track. And then a little bit more anecdotally. So in meeting minutes
Sure.
and things like that, we do track them. But I'm definitely more of a data person. I'm a people person and a data person. So I'm looking to like build the recipe to something that we've been making quite well and smells really good and tastes really good. That makes sense?
Absolutely makes sense. I also really love that analogy. I would encourage you to see where you could get the data behind those points, the touch points that are happening that are outside of letters and phone calls. Or excuse me, letters and like a formal touches, just so that you could, because each person is going to have an individualized plan. We can have certain parts of the recipe and know that some are going to all are going to require baking powder. I like to keep going with that recipe thing. But it might need a little bit of more of something else. So what I would say is, even as a data person, if you do not have a place that you're handling, that your board, your chair has given them a call, or you've taken those individuals to lunch, or X, Y, or Z, I would encourage you to lean into that. Most CRMs have that opportunity. What I, as a data person myself, one of the things that I don't love is when data falls under the table and we don't see it. There's always, what happens if, I was sick and I didn't get to tell you that I just had a great conversation with this person. So make it part of your ritual to make sure that is talked about and everyone's on the same page that is in the relationship. But also being aware that like I said, everyone is going to have a different touch and a kind of a different recipe for success. And I think that really goes back to Becca's point, and the point that was been sort of emphasized is individualize. It's all about you is such an important thing to always remember throughout every step. I'm hoping that sort of answers a little bit of that piece for you. And I did see the question from Susan about CRMs. I would actually like to let someone else answer that, and like as in a participant, which ones are working for you. I have my favorites, but I would love to hear from someone else, like what has been working for them to track those.
I'll just say, since I was the question first, thank you for your response. Fantastic. Second, we use Donor Perfect, which is, I feel it's robust and it's great. And it's only, but based on staff priorities, I only now have somebody who's really helping us do the deep dive and figuring out how to use that optimally to further, donor engagement in the way that we're talking about.
What's it called, Paul? Donor what?
Donor Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you're just interested in a CRM, in other words, a way for you to keep track of all those conversations as
Okay.
they have Salesforce is a really good one.
Right,
We see
right.
a lot of nonprofits using, and that's a way that you can kind of discipline staff and volunteers to saying, after you have coffee with this person, that you need to enter that. You need to say, had coffee on Monday, and he's not interested in this part of it, but we agreed we would get together next month to discuss something different, or he would like to be invited to a strategic board planning. So you need to keeping up the CRM is really the trick, I think. But Salesforce is I would say the one that's most common for nonprofits.
Yes.
And Becca, I'm going to put the link to TechSoup in the chat box, and I'll also put it in the post event. So TechSoup helps nonprofit organizations access discounts on some of these subscriptions, but also does some really nice comparison across different CRMs, especially for folks who are brand new to purchasing a product. Some of them can be a little bit like hitting a fly with a bat. And there's some that are very specific for, all volunteer organizations and first-time CRM adopters. So I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
And then Becca and Hannah, Sharon also has her hand up.
Wonderful.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Yes, I just wanted to mention I was on a college foundation board, and they used Razor's Edge to develop their donor database. And we had a really good process that we used. We brought most of the board in, and it was a confidential meeting. And we looked at a slice of donors that were like $100 and above, or maybe it was 500 and above. And we went through that list as a group, and everybody, there's different criteria that we kind of ranked about. Did people know this person? How well did they know him? Would they feel comfortable contacting this person? And it really was very, very powerful, because as a group and being in our community in Ventura, a lot of people know a lot of people. So it was a lot of crossover. And it was just a really effective way, I thought, to try and do that outreach and try and expand our circle of donors. So it was a great process, I thought.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to say that we shouldn't overlook the peer-to-peer review of donor lists. So that's a really good point that Sharon made. And even if you don't have an elaborate donor management system such as Razor's Edge, you could certainly take a list of your donors, and you could have that confidential meeting with your board and just do a peer-to-peer review. Here's a person who's been giving us at this modest level. Does anybody know them? Do we know anything about them? How could we connect with them? And board members, as you say, people know people. So it can be a really good way to connect board members or committee members with your donor list. All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Hannah now to take us through the rest of our time together here.
Thank you, Becca, and thank you all for the conversation. It's been so wonderful to hear from so many different individuals, and it's so fun to hear like how we're all working through the same things, but in different capacities. So I love that we can be able to share best practices and ideas. So moving at, kind of coming back to review what Becca had talked about different kinds of fundraising, excuse me. I think there's 3 super important things that you need to consider when filling out your development calendar, when you're refining the work that we started earlier this morning. And that is, this is not a one size fits all solution. Every organization is set up differently. They have, we all have different development teams. We all have different staff sizes. Susan, as an all volunteer organization, what might apply for you may not apply for, excuse me, Casa Pacifica. So you really need to think about what's the best blend of these modalities for your organization, and what mix is going to help you build the relationships with your donors, existing and new donors. I would also really encourage you to take note about what you as an organization can really take on. If you are a one-person development team or one-person staff, what is realistic with your board, with your volunteers? What will not push you to a place of burnout or over using your resources in one particular thing, in one particular area. Becca, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to take the next.
No worries. I hear that throat of yours just giving you trouble. So
I'm so sorry.
No problem. Totally understand it. That's why we're a team. So tailoring this, as Hannah said, tailoring this to your organization is what this is all about. And that's what we want you to spend some time doing on your homework. So the next slide, please. Your development plan is your roadmap. It's going to give you the direction that you're going to go. It's going to help you with what the milestones are. It's going to spread out the work in a manageable way for staff and volunteers. And it's going to get you to a particular destination. We're going to make sure in our roadmap that we aren't asking, we're not sending out 10 requests a year to the same donor, that we are asking our high-end donors to attend an event. And maybe our more modest donors, we are asking for them to attend a Zoom lecture that they can dial in on. Consider the rocks in the road and local events. So if you are trying to do a fundraising event and it is during, for example, in Santa Barbara during Fiesta, that's going to be hard to get people's attention. In Thousand Oaks, Conejo Valley Days, that's a hard time to get people's attention. So look at what the rocks in the road are and what you need to work around. And then prime time for fundraising, already mentioned this, it's the end of the year. It's that last quarter, October, November, December, when most philanthropy happens by a big percentage. I should have looked that up for you and I didn't. Something like 80% of all philanthropy happens in the last 3 months of the year. So when should you be most active? During those last 3 months of the year. And we mentioned opportunities to do that through social media. This might be a time that you would consider doing an event, just paying attention to locally what's going on, but do plan to be active when donors are looking to give. Be sure that you are out there. Next slide. So back to our calendar, your homework is to refine this document, to add columns or delete columns for what will work for you. It's a Word document. You should be able to revise that in any way that makes sense to you. But what we want you to do is look at what are the ways that you are soliciting your more modest donors, kind of donors in the middle, and the high-end donors. Do you have something that appeals to all three of those groups? What's missing from your development calendar? So if you went through and put in your activities that you're doing right now to raise money, and Susan shared things like a book sale, and they have an author come and talk, put those in and look at what's missing. Where are the gaps? Who are you not reaching? So this is your homework. We want those of you who are attending, some of you have multiple attendees from the same organization. We want you to work and refine your development calendar for 12 months starting next month. Be sure to include things like planning time as well as follow-up time. After the event, the hard work begins with individual follow-up for who attended and what's our next step with that person. I'll take the next slide. An option you might consider is putting together a task force to help with your development plan. Now, what we're suggesting is that those of you who attended this workshop take the run at your development plan. Dean is going to help you at the end of our conversation here with how you sign up for office hours. Bring your development plan to office hours, and Hannah and I are going to review it with you and give you some tips and advice about that. After you have your plan done, or in what you feel like is a pretty good draft form, consider recruiting a small task force. This could be a staff person, a donor, and a volunteer in your program. It could just be three people, or it can be as large as you feel like is a good fit for your organization. And this is another way to involve people and engage people in your work. I would try to keep the task force under 10, but as I said, it can be, as small as 3. This invites people's participation in your work. And if this is your development plan, one that you've developed, it's people aren't going to care about it and they're not going to invest in it as much as if it's our plan that we did together. So I would do the draft and I would bring it to the office hours, and then I would think about who could help with this plan. And then I would put together a small task force that meets in a regular way, that does course corrections when you need them, that helps you evaluate if you're doing something that's not being successful. Let's not keep doing that. Let's figure out what the next step is for our organization. You should, if you can, it's helpful to include on this task force people from different giving groups. So if you have somebody that's an annual donor who's been giving it to you over a long period of time, I would ask that person to serve on this task force. If you have somebody who is a higher end donor that gives once a year or is a sponsor, I would ask that person to serve on this task force. You want to have representation from different giving levels here. Questions or thoughts about that task force, about your homework assignment? Okay.
Yeah, Becca, I have one quick. So I hope I didn't miss it. You haven't talked about betterworld.org or GoFundMe. And we recently signed on with Better World, which is a nonprofit that supports nonprofits, and it's lower cost than the nonprofit version of GoFundMe.
Right, sure.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about kind of where those two play into fundraising?
Yeah, again, our emphasis would be more on individuals and building
Okay.
those relationships.
Okay.
You see people having some success with Better World and
Yeah.
GoFundMe. My caution there would just be, think about the time that you're investing versus the time that you could be investing in donors and bringing them closer to you.
And I guess the other question would be newspaper articles promoting the, fundraisers and the event. Any thoughts about that?
Generally low return.
Okay.
Something that we did discuss a little bit, but
Okay.
generally very low return.
Okay.
General appeals like that.
Okay.
More significant dollars tend to come from building that relationship. So you have that one donor that's already given you 10,000.
Right.
See if you can build that relationship with that donor in a strong way. And can they introduce you to other people? Would that, and it may be too soon in the relationship, but
right.
the next step might be, would that donor invite 5 of their friends to their office?
Yeah.
For wine and cheese and an information about your organization.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just spend more time on that. There are tons of resources out there, so we don't want to bury you in them, but I would make sure that you calendar spending time with the people. And that seems to be the area, when we did that poll earlier, that most of our participants in this workshop are a little behind. Can we have the next slide? So how do you make fundraising fun? And that is the question. You want to be sure that your volunteers are enjoying the time that they are spending with you, helping bring more resources to your organization. I had a volunteer tell me after an event, which is very successful, and she chaired the event. And I had her tell me after the event, this was the worst experience of my life. I'm never doing this again. We don't want that. We want our volunteers, whether they're helping us with an annual appeal, a donor that might be offering you a challenge grant, a donor that might be willing to send something out on their contacts during Giving Tuesday. We want them to have a good time to feel appreciated and to enjoy that. So how do you make this fun? Well, you build the team. Fundraising can be scary if I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one who cares about this, or I'm the only one doing it. So build the team. Be sure there are lots of people helping with the fundraising. Then prepare that team. Nobody should be going out on a request where they haven't rehearsed it and practiced it and are comfortable with what it is they're asking the person to do. Work together. It's always more fun when we do things together and work in teams. And then show appreciation and celebrate. I think sometimes we're so busy, we just check something off. Okay, we got that done, and we're racing on to the next activity. Stop. Show appreciation to the people that helped that happen. Make sure you celebrate successes. And it's kind of in our nature to just keep going to the next thing. Be sure you pause and show appreciation and celebrate. That's what's going to make the fundraising fun. After an event, there's two kinds of a debrief. One kind of a debrief is just celebration. Let's get together. Let's meet for coffee Tuesday morning, and you want to be celebratory there. Everyone gets a gift or everyone is recognized. Mary, we couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much for bringing so many new people into our circle. The other debrief is more tactical. What could we have done better? And that is not the time that we're patting each other on the back. That's really the time that we're looking carefully at what worked and what didn't, and we're making plans for the future. All right, our final slide here is just to thank you all. This has been a fun conversation with you. We appreciate you taking the time to really invest in your development plan. And your homework is to come back to us with this completed, not only what you're doing now, but what you want to do for the future. And Hannah and I will help you through that next piece of the process. But we really want you to spend some thoughtful time on what is the roadmap that we want to lay out for the fundraising for our organization. And we have office hours available. And I think Dina is going to jump in here
Sure.
about how we sign up for that. And then we'll take any final questions or comments.
Fantastic. Thanks, Becca. And thank you, Hannah. I hope everyone will join me in a virtual round of applause for our friends and colleagues from Netzel Grigsby Associates. So we will be having these short coaching Zoom meetings. These will be virtual. They're first come, first confirmed. I've dropped the link to the Google form in the chat box so you can sign up for a slot. You do need to bring some thinking. So please take Becca up on her recommendation that the best use of that time is to do a little homework in advance. We'll go ahead and send out confirmations to each of you with the Zoom link for the 2 meetings. And those are also going to be listed in the post-event. So I've been building a post-event email to share with everyone, grabbing everyone's great comments. These first batch of dates are the dates of the that we have Becca and Hannah confirmed for the office hours. So if anybody has any additional resources, links, or recommended reading, you're welcome to drop it in the chat box and I can add it to the post event. That's going to be going out as soon as the recording is done processing in Zoom. So if anyone has any questions about office hours, you're welcome to email myself or Nate and we'll get you signed up. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in the chat box and then I'll add the form again. Sharon?
Yeah, I just was curious. You're going to be putting the office hours sign up link post email as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Dina,
Nate, you can take down the You can take down the PowerPoint so we can see.
Okay.
it. And there we go. That makes it easier for Q&A.
So
And Dean-
Heidi, did you have another question?
Yeah, I did. Can we just email you? Or you want us to do it in the Google sign up?
I would like you to do it on the Google sign up
Okay.
because they actually takes the dates out once somebody
Okay.
signed up.
Sounds good.
But if it turns into a barrier, then for certain, reach out to me and we'll get you fixed up. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions for Hannah and Becca? So the last thing I'll mention about the post event, it's going to have a link to an evaluation survey, and your grand prize by completing that evaluation survey is going to be that you'll be able to download the PDF of today's slide deck for your future reference. So please take a couple minutes and complete the survey. I think all of us have just spent 2 hours talking about how we communicate the impact of our work to our donors, and without that feedback, not only can we not refine our work, we can't really communicate the impact of our donors' contributions to the community. So really invite your candid feedback.
I'll just say thank you from Hannah and I. It's been a pleasure. And we look forward to spending time with each of you in our office hours next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you,
Yeah,
Hannah.
so good. Thanks.